All right, start streaming.
Cool beans.
My audio's not messing you up, is it?
No, that's good.
Their shop lights here are kind of loud a little bit. They got a little buzzing going on. Those big electro ballast, these things up there.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the eNASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing Series pre-race live stream. I am back this week. My name is Eric Estepp. You guys know that you're on my channel. It says my name down in the description. But this week I am joined once again by Jordan Anderson after taking a week off, and Rajah Caruth. Thank you guys for being here. Yeah, thank you guys for being here today. So we have, over 200 people already watching, and we're not even a minute into this thing. That is exciting to see. Everyone's anxious after, we had a week off for Easter.
Yep.
And now everyone's like, oh man, we can't have real race cars on the track, but everyone's now just clamoring even over the virtual stuff. So that's pretty awesome to see. But how are you guys doing? How'd you guys spend your holiday weekend, I suppose?
Man, I tell you what, I didn't do much of anything. I think we slept in and cooked out of the house, had a big bonfire, and just enjoyed it. So we did a little FaceTime with our families. Didn't get to see them, but got to visit with them and talk to them on the phone a little bit. So it was good. How about you, Rajah? What'd you guys do?
I mean, for really, we just we couldn't really go anywhere, so we were just, with the four of us, my sister, and my parents, we just had a cool meal. And aside from that, really just been on iRacing. I'm in my new sim seat, which is one of Richmond's sponsors, so finally, got an upgrade, and so a little bit more comfortable to be on iRacing. But other than that, really just working out and trying to take advantage of the free time.
The seats were like an extra tenth, isn't it? That's what I've heard.
Yeah. Yes. Extra tenth at least.
You're only as good as your seat. Is that true?
And on iRacing in real life, man, it's all about you gotta get the driver comfortable in there. That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so we have a very full show today. If you guys have missed any of our past live streams that we do, we talk usually for about 45 minutes leading up to the main event. The race today is at noon, or 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm sorry, that's noon my time. 1 p.m. Eastern. It'll be on Fox FS1 from the virtual Richmond Raceway. But we have a lot to talk about in this episode. And stay tuned towards the end because we've got a little something to tease at the end of the stream that I think is going to be I'm very excited about it. So I hope a lot of you guys hopefully excites much of the chat as well. But it's good to see so many of you guys. I see a lot of comments. Everyone's really excited. Someone just yelled, "End finger sucks." What do you feel about that, Jordan?
Actually, we got talking about cool stuff. I think one of the writers over at Pole Position Magazine is actually trying to set up a Zoom meeting with Enfinger and I next week to talk about that last lap finish. So
that's
oh man,
we'll get Grant's side of it now.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to tune into that one. That sounds awesome. Well, let's go and jump right into it. We're gonna talk about Richmond Raceway. Let's start with the information for today's race. It's a 150 lap race around the 3/4 mile. It's a short track. People call this one a short track. It's like New Hampshire. People aren't sure if it's a short track, but yeah, Richmond Raceway is a short track. We've seen conflicting reports. I believe there are 0 resets or fast repairs for today's race, but it seems like there's been conflicting reports. There might be 1, there might be 0. Not entirely sure. We've seen multiple reports, but either way, that is less than what drivers were allowed at Bristol a couple weeks back, and that race was a little messier than many of them. But I want to start with you on this one, Rajah. What do you think of these changes? Do you think having less resets is going to maybe clean up the racing, or do you think it's not really going to matter?
It can go. I think it can go two ways. It can, put that in the driver's heads that you got one car and it closes the gap. I really took, I guess, having a similar to real life mentality where you got to preserve the car over a long race. You won't try to push the issue on a pass on lap 20 when you still got 130 to go. And so it could do that, or you could have 5 cars running at the end with clean cars. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Hopefully, it'll make people be a little bit more wary about what situations they put themselves and others in, and hopefully it can put on a good show.
And what do you think, Jordan? Do you expect as many wrecks as we saw at Bristol a couple weeks ago, or last night in Saturday Night Thunder, which we'll talk about in a minute, seemed a bit cleaner? What do you expect from today's race?
Yeah, it's one thing I was sharing with you guys earlier. I talked to Larry McReynolds yesterday, and I know the guys at Fox and iRacing were really pushing to get rid of all resets for the iRacing series that we've got coming up later this afternoon. And the thinking behind that is just like Rajah said, these guys, if you know you got a reset, you're going to take a few more chances than you normally would, which cautions breed cautions. And I think you saw that Bristol last week. Guys were racing way more aggressive than normally would be if that was it. So I think you're going to see either one of two things. You're going to either see a really clean race today with a lot of give and take, some long green flag runs, or you're going to see three guys left at the end of the race. So I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to close the field up quite a bit. I think you're going to see a lot more give and take, guys not taking as many chances. And Richmond is just one of those tracks that it's so easy to overdrive. You can dive off into turn 1 or turn 3, think it's going to stick and wash up the racetrack. So we're going to see how many guys actually take those chances today. But I think all in all, after watching the LCQ earlier that Bobby Labonte led green flag, checker flag, led the whole thing. It was a pretty clean race. So I think you're going to probably see a lot of that carry over into the main show later today.
For sure. That was exciting. We'll talk about the last chance in just a moment. But yeah, Bobby Labonte getting the win. I think we can talk about it right now, actually, because this kind of leads into to the rest of our race preview here. But Bobby Labonte getting the win. I've asked, I had Garrett Smithley on my show a couple weeks ago, and I asked him who he thought the most improved Cup Series guy was on iRacing over these first few weeks. I want to get you guys' perspective. Who do you think, who stood out to you as like the most, started at nothing and now is really something so far with this Pro Invitational?
Man, I tell you, I think the guy that I've seen would be Kyle Busch. And I think, I see, Rod, you agreeing on that, man?
I agree. I think Garrett Smithley agreed, so it's pretty clear, I guess.
He's taking it so serious. Like I've watched some of his deals, and he's got his gloves on, his shoes on. I mean, he's decked out all in on it. And I think iRacing is just like the real deal, man. The more time, the more persistent you are to learn as much as you can. He's focused on learning the tire model they've got on there. So, I mean, what do you think, Rajah? Would you agree with that he's gone all in on it?
100%, 100%. I've been really impressed with Kyle, because at first I didn't think he would, take it seriously and then really put in the time, and seeing how much he's put into it. And he's got Hirschman spotting for him too, and the IndyCar stuff as well. Yep. And it's really cool just to see how much time he's putting in. I've really been impressed and happy to see that he's put in the work, and hopefully he'll maybe be doing donuts on the front stretch today.
Yep. No doubt.
That would be fun to see for sure. So a little bit more about the racetrack. Rajah, this is kind of a home race for you. We were talking before the show. You live less than a couple hours away from the track, and you're obviously a part of Richmond Racing Esports, their development program. So how realistic, I don't know how much experience you have with the real Richmond Raceway, but I'm sure you're familiar with it. But how realistic do you think this track is compared to what we see in a normal Cup race?
Yeah, I've never driven at Richmond yet, and I'm not sure, Jordan, I'm sure you have. And that the surface in real life is 20 years old, and iRacing has done a really good job of I guess making it somewhat like that in terms of having a worn out surface and really having to manage your tires. And I think it's really close. And like I said, I haven't driven on there before, but visually it looks the same. I've attended races there and walked on the track as well. And from an eye to eye standpoint and not like actual driver feel, it looks pretty close.
And what do you think, Jordan?
I agree with that. It's been a couple of years since I ran there with the K&N series, but back then it was a really big momentum track, and I think you see that you come out in iRacing a lot of you might miss a corner and it takes you a whole lap to recover the momentum back up just because it throws everything off. The way you got to get off the corner is good, and coming off of turn 4, it's really deceiving. You think you want to get in the throttle, let that thing float out wide, but you got to keep that thing down low, and you got that whole straightaway that's really a big constant turn all the way down, and it sets you up for going in turn 1 a lot quicker than maybe sometimes you really want to, and that leads to you overshooting that corner. So I think tire management is definitely going to be a big thing in the race today, and just like in real life, it's kind of interesting to see how it's changed over the years. You look back at some of the older races that Richmond ran there, and the groove kind of moves around a little bit depending on what the temperature looks like. You might see a lot of guys run the bottom. You might see that upper groove come into play. But I think after watching that LCQ earlier, I think you're going to see a lot of guys run on the bottom. And I think protecting that bottom is going to be a big part of who keeps the lead today, and how many guys are going to want to put that infamous bump and run to work, like you saw Carl Edwards do against Kyle a couple years ago. So I think, like I said, like Rajah said, I think tire management is going to be big, and I think just taking care of your equipment, because that wall off of turn 2 definitely comes up when you quick.
Yeah, watching just Saturday Night Thunder a little bit last night, it seemed like the bottom lane was definitely the preferred lane. And in a shorter race like this, I don't know if that's going to really be enough time for the second or third lane to truly come in and be as equal as maybe it would be in real life. But Rajah, were you going to try what we did a couple weeks ago, doing a little test drive? We're going to go on board here to the virtual Richmond Raceway. Let's make sure that showed up. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Nice looking race car right there.
All right. Oh yeah, I'll give you guys a little look at it. Here is the Richmond Raceway Esports Toyota Camry. As you can see, there you go.
That's good, man.
Solid.
Appreciate it. Yeah, got the little Rev Racing stripe on the door. So, here we go. So I'll do a little mock restart here as well. So basically, your pace speed is around 50, 55, I believe, and you're going to be starting in second gear. If you're in first, it'll spin the tires. So
someone's already knocked the cone onto the track, it looks like.
Yeah. So here, just let these guys go and get a little heat in the tire. It's going to be really hard to get the power down on restarts, especially being packed up and on the banking and constantly accelerating as we're coming to the green. So
tonight.
Oh, hold up. And then here we go. Restart. You can see the restart line right there, and we are going all the way up to fourth. And here in the one, especially on the restart, you got to protect the bottom because people will really try to turn down under you here. The best preferred line is to wrap that yellow like that, come out to the wall, and don't hit it like I almost did. And same here in three, you got to keep it on the yellow to keep the right rear on it, and not gas it up too quick, and be sideways down the straightaway like I am right here. And so
up close to that wall. Goodness.
Yeah, and the most important thing especially is to not do that, and just to really protect the tires. It'll be a lot of give and take, and you can let people go and get them back in a few laps, but when it gets down to 10 to go, you're really going to be pushing the entry into one, like right here. I'll see if I can get the chip into turn one next time, but it'll be really interesting to see who decides to go hard and who decides to go easy. I'll finish this right here, and hopefully I'll get the chip for you guys into turn one.
There you go. Pretty cool. That's a good view of what the drivers are going to be seeing today.
There it is, almost.
Yep, and then he missed the corner, but there's a couple laps at Virtual Richmond. 56 is a little faster than what they'll be running later because their setup is a little different than what's available for everybody else. So,
yeah.
Hopefully you guys will. Hopefully that gave you guys a good idea of what it'll be like later today.
Definitely a good view. Yeah, people were saying it was lagging a little bit. I think that's more of a Zoom issue. Zoom, in my experience, is not very good at handling
Zoom frame rate can't keep up.
No, yeah, that was too fast for Zoom there. Ironic as that may be. But there you go. Yeah, that's cool to see. For people who maybe aren't as familiar, who don't have iRacing, haven't participated in iRacing, an idea of what it looks like from the driver's perspective. It is interesting. I know a lot of these drivers have 2, 3, 7 monitors, wherever it is around them, but visibility is got to be pretty different, especially if someone's used to just playing, NASCAR Thunder and they can see everything they want. Getting into that cockpit, when I play the PlayStation games, I don't go into the cockpit view. That's just you can't see anything. So visibility can be difficult, especially on these short tracks. I'm sure that gets in people's way quite frequently.
It's funny you say it. Whenever I had my PS2 and PS3 growing up, I always said would use the roof cam, not the cockpit.
Yes.
The roof cam, because
Oh, yeah.
for me, man, inside the race car, that's really what you see. It's funny, even though I'm sitting in the seat and the cockpit's all there, all that stuff's not really in focus. It's kind of in your peripheral, and you're kind of looking out the windshield. So that was when I got on iRacing. That was one thing I had to kind of get adjusted to. But it definitely, I think it's cool that it forces everybody to run that. It's as realistic as possible. So you kind of got to get used to it, and I think that's why you see different people. I mean, I think if you went and did a poll of maybe 200 or 300 iRacers, each one of them probably would have a different monitor setup. They'd either have the big wide one or the 3 screens or 1 screen. I mean, it's kind of cool that just like in real life, everybody's got their different approaches to stuff. iRacing is the same way. Everybody kind of has their preferences on their screens and their wheel choice and pedal choice and how sensitive they want their steering box to be. So I think that's one thing that's really cool about it is all the differences that are out there.
Definitely. So let's go and move on now. Talk about last night too. We'll talk about Saturday Night Thunder a little bit. For people who missed it, it was streamed on eNASCAR.com, their YouTube channel. I watched the whole thing. I was in the chat. It was fun. People were having a good time. They had 10, 11,000 viewers at all times yesterday. I was pretty impressed. That was just on their YouTube channel. Who knows where they got elsewhere. But Josh Berry got the win pretty much in dominating fashion. Ty Majeski, Chase Cabry, the other Ty Gibbs, Landon Castle rounded out the top 5. Lots of beating and banging last night, but we talked about earlier, wasn't a wreck fest. Pretty clean racing. I thought it was actually really good racing, especially for a short track and iRacing. But Rajah, I want to start with you. Were you surprised at all by the results last night?
Not really. I knew Josh, and I've raced with a lot of Josh a lot this week, and him being I guess a fellow late model stock driver. I know the tires kind of not similar, but kind of some of the tendencies that you have in the real life stuff you can carry over to iRacing, and so I knew he was going to be really quick, and it was really cool to see Ty Gibbs running up there. I know Ty hasn't been on iRacing that long, and seeing the work that he's put in is very cool to see him running good along with my teammate Chase Cabry, and he's been on iRacing forever, and so it was pretty cool just to see. You're always going to have your wrecks and such, but overall the racing product I thought last night was pretty good and put on a good show.
What did you think, Jordan? Were there any surprises last night, or kind of business as usual?
I think the thing that's really opened my eyes up is how you get one guy, it seems like every week, that just hits on it. That's super dominant. I mean, we saw it at Bristol. We've seen it in some of the iRacing events they've had on Sunday with the Invitational. And it's just kind of cool to see how I think one guy just hits it and figures it out. They're all in the same setup, but Josh was definitely the dominant driver last night. He found his rhythm, found his groove. And yeah, I think they're really the only big one they had was that big crash with, was it Truex and Jeb there in turn 3? That was a pretty big one that took out some big names. And I think that's what's going to be interesting is, you watch the race today compared to that race last night. That big one that took out a lot of those fast guys wasn't necessarily their fault. So I think one of the big key things today is not getting caught up in somebody else's mistake or somebody else's lag or someone else that's going on. But yeah, Josh was super dominant. It looked like one of his races at Hickory when he would just show up and make all 50 laps and nobody could even touch him. So he was fast last night, super consistent. Like, you were just saying, Raj, it's so easy to overdrive those corners or get loose up off the corner and burn your stuff up. So, I think you might even see watching that race today. I watched that race last night and Josh was out front, but if you watch that 2nd through 8, there's a lot of changing going on with those guys, a lot of fight and a lot of back and forth. And I think you might see that today, that even if somebody does jump out front early, it might be for maybe the first 3 quarters of the race, because there's going to be a guy that's in 4th or 5th that's just riding, going 70, 80%, that when you get to 20 to go, he might have a little something more left than other guy does out front.
We saw some tempers last night too. I remember it looked like a couple times people, I don't know, one of the qualifying races, Harrison Burton got mad at, I forget who it was now, but just turned him on the straightaway in retaliation. Do you guys expect, with no resets today, or maybe only one, we don't know, I think it's no resets today, do you guys expect any sort of retaliation? We've seen glimpses of it already in some of these Pro Invitational races so far.
Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't seen is Suarez back in the field this week?
He raced in
Yes.
in the qualifier, so he's back.
Since Suarez raced, I don't know. We'll see what Daniel does this week. But I think, like you said, with people not having resets, unless somebody wants to shorten their day or be the end of their own race, I don't think you're going to see that this week. What do you think, Raj? You think anybody's going to lose their cool today?
It'll be interesting. I definitely think I guess if some people's days compounded it not being the way they want to go, and I guess eventually you'll get that with like their due to go, but it'll be interesting. I certainly hope you don't get a lot of retaliation, especially regardless if you have a reset or not. I feel like you shouldn't, I guess, treat this as different as you would in real life. You wouldn't try to junk somebody 20 laps in for cutting your nose off or dive bombing you, but you would leave that in the memory bank for late in the race. So it'll be really interesting, and hopefully, we don't get in a little bit of that. So at least 30 to go. I guess 30 to go, 25 to go, all bets are off.
Yeah. You say that though, man. It's funny. We were at when we were in Vegas earlier this year, racing. I think we qualified like 18th, 19th, and one of the guys I was racing with, we're 5 laps in. He's like trying to door me. I'm like, dude, there's 130 laps left to go. What are you doing? So I think if we see that today, it's going to be just like real life. And I think some guys forget one lap they're on. And get a little aggressive out there, but I think it is going to be a good race, and I think that's one thing that this is cool that I think NASCAR is doing is, so I think some fans I've seen on Twitter have been frustrated that they've changed it and done a different format every week, but I'm all for it. I mean, I think just keeping it new, keeping it fresh, trying different things, mean, we're definitely in different times now with all the stuff that's going on. So it's like, why not try some different things? I think the LCQ race and the guaranteed spot, and I think it just kind of adds a little bit of drama or different things to it. And as much as everybody on Twitter won't admit it when they complain about stuff, they love the drama that's involved with some of the changes and things that come with it. So I think iRacing and NASCAR have done a great job to just kind of bring a fresh product to the table every week for what fans are expecting when the green flag drops.
I agree on that. I wish, like today, for instance, I wish they'd been able to like stream the qualifying race. I know some of the drivers did, so that's cool at least. Speaking of streams, I want to see, is Daniel Suarez streaming today? Because that would be one I want to watch. You just don't know what's going to happen in that 96 car. But kind of talking about that for a moment, Jordan. So yeah, this week NASCAR, iRacing, Fox. I'm not even sure who really is in charge of this thing, Jordan, in your perspective. Or Rajah, if either of you guys know, I can't tell if it's just kind of a joint effort between NASCAR, Fox, iRacing, or if iRacing's really driving it, or who's really in charge here. But they did change a lot this week with the qualifying race. They shortened the guaranteed field down to 26. You saw some drivers like Dale Jr. kind of uninvited himself because he wanted to let full-time Cup guys take those spots, but now he's still in because he raced his way in the qualifier. The Fox and iRacing kind of caved and gave him the qualifying race. Michael McDowell, Cup guy who's raced, I think, every Pro Invitational, wasn't even invited this week. So I think some fans maybe are a little frustrated by some of the behind-the-scenes politics maybe of it all. I don't know if either of you can shed some light on maybe what's going on behind the scenes, who's really making a lot of these decisions. But I think that's the only part that, at least from my perspective, is a little bit confusing perhaps, now that it like these races get millions of views and like now some teams have sponsors like that are actually involved for the sake of these races. I just think it's turned this into a little bit more of it's added drama, which is great to talk about, great for shows like this, great for things like that we want to talk about. But I can see how that's maybe frustrated some fans at least a little bit. But I heard what you said a second ago, Jordan. I don't know what your reaction is to possibly those concerns.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I mean, we've fought some of that on our side with our truck team and some of the other invitational races have been going on. But I think iRacing, Rajah, you probably know better than I, but I think they're kind of the leading force on a lot of this stuff. And I saw on Twitter yesterday, I think somebody had kind of questioned why was Kligerman, who isn't a full-time Cup driver, why was he in it and McDowell was out? And Steve Myers with iRacing responded that, Parker was one of the guys 2 or 3 years ago that was real instrumental in getting iRacing's broadcasting structure and standards kind of up to pace and up to par with where they are now. So I think that's kind of what they're looking at. But I think iRacing is pretty involved in the back end. And, they're the ones that know this. I mean, NASCAR is a sanctioning body and runs these races, but they're not up and up with iRacing and the builds and how to broadcast this stuff. So I think they're probably leaning on iRacing a lot more than what most people would expect to make sure this stuff goes smooth and make sure all those, millions of viewers that are watching are turning in to see a good product and seeing a good broadcast get put out. But, I'm with you. Like if I were McDowell and loves travel stops, I'd be a little smoking at the ears, for a while we weren't in this week, but it's definitely something different. It's kind of hard to keep everybody happy, just like in real life, man. If everybody was happy every week at the racetrack, it wouldn't be racing. We would all be getting participation trophies. So it's somebody's always going to be outside looking in, and I think that's what you're seeing now. But what do you see, Rajah? How do you see the production standpoint of these races? Who's really the one leading the charge on all this?
Yeah, similar to what you said, I think iRacing being iRacing, and I think they have the knowledge and have the stuff that's within their power, and so I believe like Fox and NASCAR have things that they want to accomplish and they want to have. So similar to what Eric said, I think it's kind of a joint deal, and it's a little bit confusing in terms of who really gets in and doesn't, and I don't know how that's really decided, but I think it's really just a joint deal, and especially having Parker and Dale Jr. being two, I guess, ambassadors for iRacing to NASCAR and kind of leading the way and saying what can be done and what should be done. I think it's really just a joint deal, and I really don't know, to be honest.
It's all a mystery.
It's like the Wizard of Oz. Like you see the big machine, and we have no idea who's behind the veil. So
yeah.
We'll have to let inquisitive minds find out after this week who runs the show and who directs what happens.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like at least this week a lot of the decisions have been made in favor of putting on hopefully a better race, a good product. I think the Bristol being a little bit messier than like Texas or Miami that went off, I feel like very smoothly, maybe has made iRacing some of them a little bit more skittish. That's what I think drove this more than anything, to them shrinking the size of the field. But it'll be interesting. I think today 30 drivers and most of them, I think Jimmy Johnson's probably the worst iRacing guy in the field, and if Jimmy Johnson's the worst driver in your field, I'm sure you got a decent race ahead of you. So we'll see how it goes, but
It has been interesting. You talk about Jimmy and we mentioned Kyle earlier. I thought it was cool that both of those guys ran the IndyCar race at was it Motegi this past week. And Pagano is in a league of his own. He's been out there, but I think it was cool to see that Jimmy and Kyle and Jimmy, this isn't his first run. He ran the race at Watkins Glen the other week. So, it kind of makes you wonder what these guys are doing in their quarantine at home and rather than cutting the yard, they're in there logging laps on iRacing and trying to figure out this thing as quick as they can. So it'll be interesting to see what Jimmy does today. I know he struggled, and I think he even posted a video the other day of him spinning on the front stretch and getting T-boned by Ty Dillon. So I think it'll be interesting to see what Jimmy does. And he's a smart guy, so he might all that we talked about today about the overdriving and aggressive races and with no resets. It could be interesting to see if maybe Jimmy comes through with a good finish today.
That's true. Definitely could play to his strengths. And actually, going off of what you were just talking about, yeah, a lot of those NASCAR guys have kind of gone into those IndyCar races. Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished third at Michigan a week ago on a kind of fuel mileage deal, but he ran a solid race. Which of those drivers' performances have surprised you the most, or who have you been most impressed by in their ability to kind of jump between disciplines, Jordan?
I think, and I'm actually go outside of the whole NASCAR thing. I think the guy that I've been impressed with the most has been Ron Capps. I don't know if you've seen him, but I ran a race with, I think it was the Bommarito 500, the throwback race at Gateway a couple weeks ago, and Ron was in there, and him and Alexander Rossi were going for the lead the whole race. But Ron he's a drag racer, and I think it's been cool to see him jump over. And I think that's the cool thing about iRacing is I've seen a lot of guys when I'll hop in some of these hosted races or run some other things. How many guys I've seen guys that are top trophy truck drivers. I've seen guys that are they run a lot of SCCA races. I've seen a lot of guys that run late models. I've seen pretty much every single aspect of motorsports I've seen represented in some of these iRacing races, which I think is so cool. When we talk about a good driver in real life, I think some of the best ones are guys that can jump from this to that. I mean, that was, you look at the greats of motorsports, Mario Andretti, AJ Foyt, that's what made these guys' careers was they were successful in IndyCar and NASCAR, and Mario had his Formula One success. So I think it's what's been so cool is to see guys jump from series to series, and to see Dale go finish third in an IndyCar race at Michigan. I don't think anybody expected that. And there's been all the talk this year about Jimmy wanting to get in an IndyCar. So who's to say that this little break here in Indy and Jimmy running these IndyCar races doesn't kind of whet his appetite to go maybe run a road course or go run Long Beach or St. Petersburg or one of these IndyCar road races. I think it definitely is whetting his appetite, but it's been cool to see, and it's definitely something that's been different. But who do you see that stands out to you, Rajah? Who's been your the guy that's come out of nowhere on these iRaces?
Definitely, I got two, and first he's actually, I guess, a Napa teammate of Ron Capps. It's Alexander Rossi. Him doing the IndyCar stuff, and I'm pretty sure he was in the Bommarito throwback race as well. I've seen him do some NASCAR stuff too, and some other stuff that's not in, I guess, his original wheelhouse. And so to see him branch out and really learn other techniques and really disciplines of motorsports has been really cool. Along with, really, like you said, Jimmy, and I wouldn't be surprised if he hops in, I guess, what sports cars do they have on iRacing, like a BMW or a Porsche, and goes in one of those IMSA Pro Invitationals and really starts trying to figure those out, because you can really almost race every single race car in the world. And so I'm really excited to see who else can branch out and go out of their comfort zone.
Definitely. Yeah, you talk about going out of your wheelhouse, going from a Cup car to an Indy car. I mean, I'm sure you think about the first time you hop in a late model going from a Legend car. It's a little, it can be a little intimidating. Like you got another 2,000 pounds with you, or you might have more horsepower. I mean, anytime you go from the car you're used to race every week and you hop in something different, it's like this whole new realm of challenges to face. And I think that's, at least for me, speaking personally, my favorite thing about when I hop on iRacing is it's usually my first or second run out. I put the thing in the wall, and I love being able to hit that reset button. Like, all right, let's go try that again. So I think that's the coolest thing about it is you've seen a lot of these guys take the opportunity to run these cars that you normally wouldn't see.
Yeah, I think that's been really exciting. This is almost like the greatest crossover since Avengers. It's pretty exciting these days, especially if you're a race fan. So before we have over 300 people watching, so I don't want to keep these people waiting. We're going to go take some questions from the fans from the live chat here in just a couple of minutes. But before we get to that, and then we'll get to our predictions and our picks for today's race, I want to ask Jordan this, because I've seen, this is kind of some real life racing stuff, but I've seen recently, sounds like there's some reports, maybe some rumors that NASCAR is hoping to get back racing maybe sometime by mid or late May, without fans in the stands most likely. But I've heard some reports or rumors that maybe Homestead Miami Speedway could be the first race back. I don't know if you're a Truck Series guy. I know Truck Series, they're looking to get back at Homestead as well. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, but how valid are those possible rumors that NASCAR could return in Miami sometime next month?
So NASCAR has been working really hard the last 2 weeks. They've created a task force for the Truck Series, Xfinity, the Cup guys, and they basically are pooling all the team owners together to get our opinions on what we would want to see when we do go back racing, as far as, different social distancing practices, how to maybe do a one-day show for each series to keep the amount of people at the racetracks down. There's even been talks of potentially scrapping live pit stops to keep the number of people down, making the guys that are in the garage, your road crew, make those guys go over the wall, and instead of lose or gain positions on pit road, do a 1 or 2 minute break. Really what the Truck Series had when it first came out in 95, maybe a halftime break or a 2 or 3 minute break when each stage ends. So there hasn't been any talk about which track is going to be the first one back yet. I think that all really depends. You look at what the COVID-19 virus has. Each state has been hit differently with it, and each state has responded differently with it. So I don't think you're going to see in the next month or two, a vast decision made across the country of when states are going to open up. I think it's going to kind of be state by state, but that's why NASCAR's worked really hard to get the amount of people down to the racetrack. They've talked about parking the haulers. Anybody that's ever been to a NASCAR race, it is a art to see how these truck drivers park these haulers 6 inches apart from each other. They talked about, giving a gap, one spot in between each hauler. Maybe they even said on maybe a one-day show, you might see the Truck Series there, and half of us are in the Xfinity garage, the other half's in the truck garage, just trying to spread us out a little bit so we can get this done and keeping our roster count down low. So I think one of the biggest things that we heard from NASCAR this past week is normalcy. It's going to be a while until we return back to normal. And it's not a bad thing to say that we're not going to go back to the normalcy of what we saw when racing was done, but there's no better time than now to try new things like the pit stop rule or getting rid of pit crews or things like that. And for me as a team owner, a small growing team, this has been a huge hit for our expected budget for this year, but to not be racing and the loss of sponsorship and not being able to be there every week. So one of the big things that we've hit NASCAR with is, hey, how can we bring the cost down? How can we save some money? How can we really help the health and sustainability of not just truck teams, but Xfinity and Cup? So I think that the normalcy of what you would expect racing to be like is going to be a little different, but I think everybody's going to probably be in the same boat of no matter what it takes, if we can get cars back on the racetrack, it's a win for all of us.
I think well said. Yeah, that is interesting to hear where your head is at as a driver, but also as a team owner, and also kind of get a little insight into what NASCAR is thinking. I think, yeah, it's definitely unprecedented times, definitely not normal times, but I've said this since the beginning, there are chances to find some good mixed in all this bad, and like you said, a chance to possibly test some things going forward. I mean, good chance when we do get back racing, we'll see midweek races, and people have been wanting to see how that's going to work. No better time than now, at least, to try when you don't really have any other options out there. But so with that being said, this is my favorite part of the show now. We're going to go to the live chat. We have 335 people watching right now. Where's my little graphic for it? Fan questions. Oh, you guys can't see it on the Zoom call, but on the stream they can see it. Little graphic popped up. So we got fan questions now. Over 300 people watching right now. What are people talking about in the chat? Where there's a fake me in the chat. I love seeing that when it's my fake name. So anybody got any good questions for Jordan Anderson, Rajah, or even myself? Alex asked, Jordan, did you lead a lap at Daytona? Did you ever get out and lead a lap in that Daytona race?
I led for 50 feet coming into the tryover.
There you go. That should be 50 points in my opinion.
I led the wrong 50 feet. I led too early. I should have waited a little longer before I pulled out.
There you go. Philip says, congrats, Rajah, for the win at Daytona. What series was that? I saw that earlier this week, a couple days ago.
So it wasn't really a series. It was a charity race that had some NASCAR Instagram accounts I put together, and I got invited to. So I haven't picked my charity yet, but I probably should pick that soon, and probably maybe something related to COVID relief or helping put food in people's bellies. But it was very cool to be invited to that race and, just to do something with a Friday night.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Winning Daytona is always big. I don't care where it is, what series.
Good point. Good point.
Andrew asked Jordan, what is your favorite paint scheme that you have run?
Favorite paint scheme is 007 all the way. The flat black, the neon yellow, the white. We've actually got, I don't know if you guys can see it. That is 007 right there on the set plate. So no wrap, no headlight decals. Yes, the headlight decals the headlights aren't real. They're actually decals. But 007 is by far my favorite. And actually, it was an accident. We actually bought a truck that was already flat black. We didn't have time to wrap it, so we came up with a super easy, simple scheme that we could do the next day. And 007 got a new paint scheme, and it's kind of stuck. And I think most everybody else has liked it too. And the white and blue one behind me here is not too bad either.
Yeah, 007 is definitely solid. I like the K seal from Daytona though. The orange was a nice change of pace.
It did. It pops, man, and everybody talks about how they want to see that orange back. So we're working with K Seal hard. You know, it's been some tough times, but I know those guys are really interested in talking about maybe making an appearance at Bristol later this year is one of the races that we've talked about. So that K Seal orange would look good going around that Coliseum, wouldn't it?
That would be pretty freaking awesome. I just saw a good question. I missed it. Oh, here we go. From Fish Productions. This question's for Jordan, but I'm going to go ahead and broaden that to everyone in the chat. Have you guys played Wii Sports?
I'll let Rajah start with that. Because
Yes.
I want to share my story.
Yeah, this is hilarious. Yes. I didn't have like a video game till like 5th grade, and I had a Wii at first, and so I had Wii Sports and NASCAR 2011 on the Wii, which is a very bad decision. So, funny story. I was, the baseball game, the Wii Sports baseball. So I didn't have my wristband like attached properly. So the remote flies out of my hand, hits a painting on the wall, and the painting falls. And there's just like a dent. There was a dent in the wall in our old house. So kids, if Wii's are still a thing, attach the bracelets very tightly.
So I'm like kind of like you, but I never actually had my own Wii. My cousins had one, and my mom and dad were just against it because we were very aggressive kids growing up. We tore up a lot of stuff without a Wii, and I'll never forget. I was probably 14 years old at my grandparents' house, and my cousins brought their Wii over, and we were doing bowling, and I was chucking that thing as hard as I could to get it down.
Show.
Same thing. Didn't have the wristband on. And my controller actually went through the sheetrock in the wall.
Oh,
so that was a fun way to explain to my grandfather why there was a big hole in his sheetrock in the den.
Wow, I didn't expect that question to have so many stories behind it.
Controller getting out of hand.
Wow, there we go. This was an interesting one from Eric Van D. Question: what is the most underrated / overrated car generation in NASCAR?
Jordan, you go since you've been alive longer than me.
You trying to tell me I'm old? Overrated? I don't know. Like I definitely, my dad was always a big GM guy growing up. So, I always liked Chevrolets. Driving a Chevrolet now, I've always loved Chevrolets. But I think one thing that is always funny is you hear people talk about, oh man, I miss the old days when you had this manufacturer, that manufacturer. So I think anybody that always talks about, oh, I miss the old days, I think that's definitely overrated because I think right now you've got, some great manufacturers in the sport. Definitely miss Pontiac. I may be a little jaded for that because the first car I ever had was a 1988 Pontiac Grand Am. The leaf springs were so wore out when you took a turn too fast, it would actually bottom out. So I may be a little biased to say I do miss seeing Pontiac out there. And I think one thing you look at, like Dodge actually had like the next gen car that was supposed to get done that all fell apart when they had to get bailed out and they pulled out of the sport. So, but yeah, I think anybody talks about like, stuff that's overrated. I think definitely anytime that you say, 30, 40 years ago, and that was back when there were 3 guys finished on a lead lap on every race. So I think the fields are super close now. So I definitely would say anybody that says back in the day. What do you think? You may step on somebody's toes here with your question.
Man, I don't know. I mean, having to read about, manufacturers other than Chevy, Ford, Toyota, and Dodge in history books, it's been really interesting to really, I guess, think about it. And I think especially nowadays, seeing how much the manufacturers interact with everybody and how much they're into the sport and how much they do for the drivers and such, it's really interesting. It's hard to pick a favorite and say what's good and what's not. And I really don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, I've only watched, seeing a Dodge on the hood or a Chevy or a Ford or a Toyota. And so I don't know. I really don't know. My favorite car of all time, It's a Ford Mustang, but I'm with Toyota with Richmond Raceway Esports. So I really don't know. It's hard to say what's underrated, what's overrated.
For me, I always thought the Gen 5 like car tomorrow with the big wing, I thought that looked a little silly, but I think overall, even like 2011, 2012, I always liked the way that generation of race car and the Cup Series at least raced, even though I didn't like, they were very boxy, but I like the way they raced at least. I think those have always been slightly over insulted. You know, I feel like people like to trash them. I think that's a little overblown. Let's see. Oh, I had a question. I lost it. Where'd it go? Someone's talking about Wii Sports, and they launched remotes at their TV as well. So you guys aren't alone. That's pretty exciting. Someone keeps asking. Oh, where's the name? But I keep seeing it. Someone keeps asking Rajah where you got your haircut. I don't know if that's something you're able to share.
I've not gotten a haircut, like a legitimate haircut, in a month and a half. So this is, however,
I feel like you're not alone there. I feel like a lot of people are.
Yeah, definitely not alone. But or just growing it out. Yeah, that's all I gotta say on the hair.
Yeah,
that's what I got hats for.
You're kind of like my crew chief. So he was here in the shop the other day, and he's kind of got like a little mullet thing going on in the back. Like, I need to get a haircut. I'm like, here's a good thing about it. We still got 3 or 4 weeks at the most of quarantine. I'm like, go ahead and cut your hair. And if it turns out that you slip and you take out like a nice big old chunk right here, you got a couple weeks for it to grow out. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's the positive side. And they make like I'm like you. That's why they make hats. They just kind of cover that up if it gets too bad.
Awesome. All right, so we'll have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. This might be a fun one, possibly to wrap up on. This question's for Rajah, but I feel like we can turn it to both of you guys because I don't know if you guys have answered this question before. But who was your favorite driver, NASCAR driver, any driver growing up? I'll start with you, Rajah. Who's your favorite driver growing up, or even now?
Man, I mean, growing up, I had a few guys. You know, Jimmy Johnson was my first guy growing up, and along with Newman and Burton, those were the guys I really looked up to growing up. And Darrell Wallace, being in the Drive for Diversity program, I attached to him as he started to rise through the ranks. But for now, really, it was just Jimmy, Newman, and Bubba, and then that's really it. You know, and you know, learning stuff from Edwards and Biffle, and seeing, you know, how they treated people, how they treated sponsors, and how off the racetrack to begin with, you know, seeing how they conducted interviews post race, and how they were as people. You know, those were stuff that I didn't know at the time, but really paid attention to as I grew up.
Yeah, those are definitely some good picks. I mean, I think I was maybe being a little bit older. Jimmy Johnson was a guy that I was kind of a little older, but he was always a great guy to model after. But I was a huge Jeff Gordon fan growing up. Born in '91, you know, I started watching racing when I was 5, 6 years old, and that was the dominant era of Jeff Gordon was the '90s. So I dressed as Jeff Gordon for Halloween a couple times. And was a huge Gordon fan. Mark Martin was another guy that I always really liked, the fact that he was respected by so many other racers. He was always a hard-nosed racer, but never took anybody out, was always respected. And then Carl Edwards was another guy that, as I got older, racing late models and ran on dirt, he was a guy that I looked up to really respect how he handled himself and his career story of how he really came from middle of nowhere, Missouri, and came up through street stocks and then ran the Truck Series for a guy like Mike Mittler, came up from nothing and really made his own breaks. So he was definitely a guy that I looked up to coming up. But those would be my 3 as well.
Both y'all mentioned nice. Carl Edwards. So you guys think Carl Edwards is a Hall of Famer?
I think so. I think a lot of people felt differently about it, but I think that the whole Hall of Fame thing has been interesting, the way they've approached it, how people are getting in. But I think Carl, I still wish he could have had a longer career because I think he probably had some more he was going to accomplish. But I think what he did even in a short span, I think maybe should have been done a little bit later down the road. So I think even Carl, when they reached out to interview him, I think he was even kind of surprised by it. So was Dale Jr. when he was in there. So, but either way, I still think it's so cool, and both those guys are definitely worthy with the success they had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. In terms of the whole process of how the Hall of Fame is done, it's really interesting how they decided to do 2. I think it was 2 present day, 1 pioneer, or 1 present day, 2 pioneer. I'm not sure. And it was pretty cool to see Carl be picked along with Dale Jr. You know, I always thought, you know, with the Hall of Fame only coming out like 2010, that there would be a lot of guys from back in the day that would be in it, like Mike Stefanik and like Sam Ard, and you know, it was really surprising to me to see, you know, Junior and Carl on the ballot. You know, not really surprising considering how much they did in their careers and both Xfinity and Cup and as a whole off the track as well. But I'm really curious to see, who gets in.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you got like Waddell Wilson. Waddell, funny story, actually still delivers gears to our shop from Magnet
Really?
Performance Products in Mooresville. The gears that we run in our truck every week, Waddell brings them here to the shop, and always cool to talk, history with him, and huge history buff of the sport. So anytime you get to meet or talk to somebody like that that's in the Hall of Fame is pretty cool. So, but my pick that I hope gets back, I'd like to see Marvin Panch back on the ballot. I know he got removed after he didn't get it last year, but it would be cool to see him back on there.
For sure. So
Agreed.
really quick, before we go into picks, I like this question. Nicholas asked, please ask Jordan about the Truck Series bounty. Really quick, what's your thoughts on that? Is that even going to still be in play once we get back racing? I don't even know.
I think that everybody's got enough problems on their plate to figure out how to even get back racing that I think that's probably taken a back seat for quite a while. And it wouldn't hurt my feelings because there was a lot of people that were going to be throwing a lot of money to go around a couple truck races with not really any investment in the series. My thing, even with the Triple Truck Challenge, here's my thought on it. That was a lot of money to the winner of each race. I just like to see take that $50,000 and just spread it on the field, and everybody's going to be a lot happier over that. And so I don't know. I don't think you're going to see it come back. If it does come back, it won't be in the same structure that it was. But like I said, I think everybody has enough other problems to figure out how to get back racing before anybody's worried about a bounty or Angela Ruck and Kevin Harvick getting into it anytime soon. I think there's other stuff to worry about.
Probably for the best as well. All right, so we've made it to our final portion of the show. Thank you, everyone. We still have, we're closing on 400 viewers now. So thank you, everyone, for your questions. Hopefully, we were able to get to most of them. I know there's a lot we weren't able to get to, but feel free to tweet at these guys. You guys are both super active on social media. Maybe these guys will answer your questions over there if you reach out to them. So now we'll move on to race picks for today's race. So you got 26 locked-in drivers. Kevin Harvick is racing this week. This is his first Pro Invitational race, I believe. Bobby Labonte, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Daniel Suarez, and Landon Castle raced in the qualifier. So I'll start with you, Rajah. Who is your pick to win today's race at Richmond?
Yeah, so I picked this guy in the morning. I had a little Richmond Raceway preview with Dennis Berkmeyer and Zach Novak and Brandon Brown, and I picked Landon Castle, and he got his way in from the LCQ. So I've seen him in a couple official races this week. So I think he'll hopefully be tough to beat and make me look pretty smart.
What about you, Jordan? Who's your pick for today's race?
I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. We were talking about Kyle earlier, so I'm going to go with him, and hopefully I can keep my stats going because I know last time we were on here, I told you guys Timmy Hill is going to bring home the win, so hopefully that's like the good luck charm to those guys. So but I think Kyle, he's going to race smart. I think we talked about earlier how much he's been practicing on there, so I think Kyle's going to do it, and I think probably a close second. I was really impressed with Bobby Labonte in his LCQ, so I think probably going to see him in the top 5 as well. And like Raj said, I was really impressed with Landon's speed. He was super fast, so it'll be interesting to see how he does. But I'm going for Kyle to bring home the W.
That'd be pretty crazy if Bobby Labonte got the win. I'm going with Ryan Preece this weekend. He grew up racing short tracks, and he's run pretty well in these races so far. He's actually kind of been the dark horse, the quiet favorite in some of these races. He's been up in the top 5 late in a lot of these things. So I'll lean Ryan Preece. I think I saw Junior put something out that said he thought Preece was one of the top 2 or 3 on speed during the week. So I'll lean in on that one. I'll go with Ryan Preece. Chat is letting everyone know who they think. I see Byron. Someone says very adamantly that Kyle Busch will not win. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Of course,
Byron's got a special paint scheme that Rusty Walrus did.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it because I was going to mention it. Look at this thing. I'm flashing up for people on the stream to see. I had it prepared because I wanted to give my guy Rusty a shout out. He designed the black and gold flames that William Byron is going to be running today. So congrats to Rusty. I know that was exciting for him to now be technically a part of the 24 cars history. That thing is sharp. And I know Byron ran a special scheme last week. I like that they're doing this every week, kind of mixing up the colors and giving people a chance to mix them up on their own. And he was able to win, at Bristol a couple weeks back. So maybe the custom schemes are good luck for William Byron. That would be pretty cool to see that one in victory lane as well. So shout out Rusty Walrus for that one. I think that's about it. I've hit just about everything. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to mention. Rajah, I saw on Twitter you're taking over the Richmond Raceway Esports Twitter account today during the actual race. So everyone be sure to go follow that. What do you have? What are you going to be talking about over there during the race today?
I'll just, be giving my thoughts and giving a little secrets and why people are doing certain things on the track, and probably explaining some things that are normal to me, but maybe to the average viewer or the average racer that doesn't really delve into sim racing, to understand the comparisons and what really everything means.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Well, I'll be sure to follow along. I encourage all 365 people watching to do the same. But that's all I think I've got today. I think are we good? Is that it? We went a little longer than usual this week.
It was good show, man. Thank you guys
Yeah.
for having us, man. It's going to be interesting to watch the race today to see who comes out. I'll be tuning into Richmond Raceway's Twitter to see what Rajah's got to say about that. So make sure you guys do that too. And it's going to be like a normal Sunday, man. We're going to kick back on the couch and watch a little NASCAR on TV.
Yeah, race starts in about 10 minutes. So I encourage everyone, once we're done here, to get on over there. But yeah, on behalf of Jordan Anderson, Rajah Caruth, I am Eric Estepp. I put all their links down in the description. Give them all a follow. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate you.
Before we go, man, we got some big news. I meant to share with you guys earlier. We got some cool stuff coming up next week. Can't give too many details yet. We got an official press release going out tomorrow, but me and Austin Wayne Self have been working super hard. We've got an Icebox, it's called the Icebox Pickup Throwdown iRacing Truck Series, and it's going to be kicking off April 23rd, this coming Saturday. And you guys have been watching, trucks haven't really had a presence under NASCAR's banner through all this stuff, man. All you guys love to watching the Truck Series. We love it. We've obviously got a lot of pickup trucks here in our top, so we figured we would kick off the Pickup Throwdown Challenge. We've got some guys like me, Austin Wayne Self, Spencer Boyd. We've talked to a bunch of other truck and Xfinity guys, so we can't wait. We're working with Podium Esports on that, so we got some cool stuff that's going to be coming out. So check out the press release that's coming out tomorrow. It'd be super exciting to get this kicked off. We've even got a bunch of other partners going to jump up and throw some cool prizes in for everybody. So we're going to try and fill that Truck Series gap that has been missing on the iRacing platform. So it'll be exciting to see this all come together.
Definitely. And as we go, we even have a brief teaser here if you guys want to see the logo.
I hadn't seen this yet. This will be cool.
All right.
Oh man. Oh, you got MDK on this too.
Yeah.
Legit.
April 23rd is the date. That's all we can say for now, but stay tuned for tomorrow. There will be more information. That's going to be pretty freaking awesome. Where's the race streamed? I see Stuart asking. We'll let you know we'll let you know tomorrow, and we'll be hyping it up all over the place. But let me put this way. You're probably in one of the right places to see it. Let's put it that way. You aren't going to have to go far to find it. But that's awesome. So Jordan, yeah, you've been working really hard on that. I know a lot of people behind the scenes have been working really hard on that as well. So this week, it's going to be exciting to share that with all of you. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. This was a fun stream. And we'll see you all again, hopefully next week. We'll do it again. Thanks for being here, guys.
Sounds good. See you guys.